Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic headquarters show. We're coming live from Film Fanatic headquarters. It's a little early. It's a little early in the morning. I had some problems sleeping. It's 6:33 in the morning. I don't usually get up this early. I've actually been up since about 2:30 or 3. So bear with me, but I had was not able to go to sleep. My cat has been not doing very well. She she was taking she's pretty old, so she got pretty sick. Well, not really sick, but basically she fell, I think, and she hurt her legs. And then around Thanksgiving that happened, and then recently she's been doing great. She's been, she doesn't have her total agility back ever since that happened. And um, she has been doing good though otherwise, and she's been in a good mood, and she's been eating really well. She's been happy and been really active, running around. She can't it takes her a little bit always takes her a little bit more time to like climb on certain things, but usually she can get around fine. But just last night, this morning, I heard this like thumping around. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And I got up and I saw my cat Lucy. She was like stumbling, and now she can't really walk again. So I'm not really sure what the hell is going on. So anyway, I could not go back to sleep, and I am trying to make the best of a crappy situation. So I decided to do a video at this hour, and so this should be interesting. But anyway, hope everyone's doing good. It's again, it is very very early in the morning, 6:35. It's Thursday morning, so pretty excited for this weekend. I have uh, a couple of big shows with a new band that I've been playing with. Started playing with them in about December of last year, and they're just super awesome. Osmia, really great rock band. I love those guys to death, and we're playing tomorrow night at Hey Sailor. And then on Saturday, I'm playing at the All Roads Festival with Quantum. So super excited for this weekend for these shows. So, and we've been trying to do some extra promotion for the shows, and so hopefully, some folks will come out. Usually, the All Roads Festival is pretty good because there's a lot of people at those. I've played at it a few times. Been fortunate to play at that festival a few times, and it's got a pretty big, built-in kind of audience. At least that's how it's been because there's a lot of bands playing and there's like multiple venues going. So, but I've been doing promotion for it anyway. Not as much like as if I was doing my own kind of independent gig, because usually if I'm doing my own independent gig where it's just me kind of playing somewhere, I usually have to do a shit ton of promotion to get word out and all that stuff, and that's a lot of work. But still been doing a lot of promotion for it, but probably half the amount of what I normally do because it's kind of kind of an established thing, and it's not. We're playing a really really short set, and there's 50 bands playing. So anyway, and the festival starts tomorrow night in the evening, and then and it's pretty cool because all the performers in the shows or for the festival, you get like a free pass, so you're able to go and see all the music when you're not playing, and it's pretty awesome. So I might go, depending on what time tomorrow ends, I might go over there and check that out. And the two best times are usually Friday night and then Saturday night. Friday night they have the opening party, and that's pretty sweet. It's all at Marshall Wharf in Belfast. Um, the parties, and then Saturday is the closing night, and that's the closing party, and it's usually pretty sweet. And there's like two or three other venues also going on, but I think the coolest spot is Marshall Wharf, and we'll be playing there, so that would be pretty sweet. So hopefully everything goes okay. And anyway, so today's show is on a movie I've been wanting to see for actually a long time. I had heard about it throughout the years, and it was just one of those movies that I just never got around to seeing it. And then, kind of a weird, I guess, kind of a long, weird history with this movie, indirectly, if that makes any sense. About 2 years ago, Opera House Video, they do it every year now. I missed, I think I missed the last one. They had one, I think, in the fall or winter of last year, but I wasn't, I think I totally missed it. I didn't know that was happening. I ended up missing it. I've been to two or three of them. Basically, what Opera House Video does is they do these big kind of street sales, and they have a ton of inventory, a ton of movies, that they just don't have room for. And they're always people are always dropping movies off for them. And, Dennis Howard, the owner, Opera House Video, the only video store in the state of Maine where you can actually go and rent movies and TV shows. And basically, they get inundated with tons and tons of movies that they just don't have the space for. I've been in the back room of Opera House Video, and it's insane how many movies there are back there. Like, there's just stuff everywhere. Tons of DVDs, tons of VHS. Yeah, it's wild. But they just, it's a pretty good sized store, but they have thousands of movies, and also including probably maybe 1,000 TV shows. But there's just a limitation to how much stuff you can put out. So what Dennis does is usually they do it a few times a year where they do these street sales, and basically they try to sell all that stuff that's in the back, and they sell it at a really cheap price. But then that money that they make from those sales goes directly into their pocket. So it's pretty awesome for them, and they do really well. Every time I've been there, there's been a ton of people there, and they people buy a ton of movies. So, and the movies are really cheap, and they have a pretty awesome selection. I mean, I've been amazed by some movies that I've gotten. I've also gotten Blu-rays is kind of my main thing that I try to shoot for as far as buying physical media. And I have gotten some really good Blu-rays at these sales. They typically don't have a ton, but they usually have some good ones. And today is a movie that I got on Blu-ray, which was a Criterion collection from the Criterion collection. And so I'm pretty excited about talking about this movie. But anyway, so I bought this movie that I'm going to talk about in a second about 2 years ago at it was probably almost 2 years ago at one of these sales. And I own a lot of movies, and I haven't been buying as many movies as I want to, but I hopefully will do that soon. But I bought this one movie, and I just never, I don't know, I put it in my shelf, I put it in I got some new shelving this December, and for a while the movie was just kind of stacked on this big giant pile, and it was kind of a pile of crap. But around December, I got some new shelving for all my movies, so all my movies are pretty organized now, and so I put this movie uh, in that shelf, and it's just kind of been sitting there. And then finally yesterday, or actually yesterday, and then which was Wednesday, and then also Tuesday, I started watching this movie. And in the movie that I'm going to talk about is Until the End of the World, directed by Wim Wenders, a German director, and it came out in 1991. And this movie has, this is a Criterion collection, and it's the original. There's two different cuts of this movie. It came out. When did I say it came out? In 91. Yeah, it came out in 91, and it was directed by Wim Wenders, a German director who's pretty famous director. He did that documentary Buena Vista Social Club, which is really great. But he's also done all kinds of movies and documentaries. He's a photographer, and probably about 3 or 4 months ago, I had a friend, my good buddy Zafra, who was a big movie buddy, a friend of mine. We watch a lot of movies. He's really into movies, and we go to the movies quite a bit. He had just watched this movie, and he said that he was, just enamored with it, and said, it's a masterpiece, but it's an undertaking because this movie, this version is like, it's almost 5 hours long, and I guess the original cut when it came out was like 3 hours, 2.5 hours, and again, and in passing, I had heard that this movie, Until the End of the World, this is a beautiful collection. I got this for like $1 at Opera House Video during one of their sales, and this is a Criterion collection. And Criterion Blu-rays are typically really expensive, and so I don't own a ton of Criterion movies. I do own quite a few. I probably own maybe about 10, 8 to 10 Criterion collections. Some on DVD, some on Blu-ray. And I had heard about this movie that, if you're like this film is a piece of like it's true cinematic art. I've heard this film described as a masterpiece. It's definitely, I would say this is definitely a art house film. It's very ambitious. It's super long, and I'm going to talk about the length and that there's two different versions of this film. So I was late to the game with seeing this movie, and I finally sat down and watched it, or tried watching it. And again, this movie has been heralded by, I've looked up a lot of information about this film, and this film again is one of those movies that people like, look at it and regard it. A lot of critics, a lot of film critics, and people who are really into cinema and foreign films, and people who are into documentaries, even people who are truly into film really regard this movie as like a masterpiece, and a real masterwork by Wim Wenders. And this, a lot of people say that this is a monumental achievement, and it's an essential film. If you're into classic cinema, this is one of those movies that you need to kind of see or add to your collection. And I tried watching this movie Tuesday night, and I have to say, for the life of me, I could not get into this movie at all. I couldn't get into it, and I was like, I was disappointed. Well, I don't know, kind of disappointed in myself, which sounds funny, but I was kind of disappointed. I tried watching it. Uh, right now it's Thursday morning. I tried watching it Tuesday night, and then I tried again to watch it yesterday. And when I first put this movie in, I didn't know very much about this movie. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I should say I the things I heard about this movie were that, again, it's like essential. It's a film classic. It's like it's essential, like seeing classic Kurosawa or Kubrick, or you know Werner Herzog films. I mean, like, just films that are really rich and complex in scope, but they are just really important films that say a lot. And throughout a period of time, I had always heard that this movie is like an essential movie, like kind of like a Citizen Kane or a Touch of Evil, by Orson Welles. Like, essential cinema. And I'd always heard it referred to as that. And so, but as other than that, I didn't know anything about this movie. I honestly, when I picked this movie up a couple of years ago, I briefly looked at it, and it looked gorgeous, and I was like, well, it's Criterion. I have no idea what this movie is, but it's like $1. I'm gonna buy this, and it's Blu-ray. And typically, Criterion movies are like $30. Like they're super expensive. They have not gone down in price. That's one of the they're I mean they do amazing work. I mean high end craftsmanship with all of their releases. They always put lots of cool special features usually. I mean the packaging is just, amazing for this. It's got, 3 discs, like it's insane. You have the movies on 2 different Blu-ray discs, and then there's a whole other disc of special features or supplements. So it's insane, and there's like I think 2 different versions of the film. There's the original version that came out, and then the extended cut that's like 5 hours long or so. So I mean, you get your bang for your buck, and I just bought it, and I didn't know anything about this movie, and so Tuesday I started watching it, and I didn't. It wasn't. I was again when I said I was kind of disappointed, and like where I was like, man, I just can't get into this movie. And then I thought, well, maybe, because sometimes that happens. Like, if I start watching a movie and it's like close to midnight, unless it's like, say, a weekend night and I'm staying up late anyway, like, I stay up late anyway, a little too late, but usually on weekends I'll stay up a little bit later. And so, like, there's been plenty of times I'll throw in a movie and, I'll watch a movie and it will be like 12:30 or whatever. And I'll be into it. But a lot of times I don't typically watch movies super, super late only because my attention, after about, 11 o'clock, my attention starts waning. And so I'll wait till, like, I'm more fresh. Because I like to watch a movie when when I'm awake and alert. But so I thought, well, maybe that was the case. Maybe that's why I couldn't get into this movie because I watched it a little too late. But it really wasn't any late. It wasn't really any later than usual because typically, my typical routine is like, you know, um, you know, well, my typical day routine is like I get up in the morning, I have my coffee. I always now I do. I'm really into audiobooks, so now I start off the day listening doing my audiobook stuff, and that's a super fun thing. It's a new thing for me. I have my coffee, wake up, do that for a while, and then I usually transition from the audiobook to where I'm like listening to music for a while, and then I'll work on some video stuff for the channel. I'll either record a video or upload some videos, and then I usually, I do that for a little while, and then by that point, then I'll usually start, working on music stuff and practice for a while. Practice for put in a few hours doing that, and then I'll, you know, do my little exercise routine, make some food, take a little like chill time, a little mini power nap, or if you will. Then I go to the Montessori school where I work. I work there part time. I go there, and then come home, chill out for a little bit longer, and then start another practice regimen. And I usually go till about 9:15 or 9:30. Usually about 9:15 or 9:30, I'm usually maxed. I'm usually tapped out by that point. If I have a rehearsal, and I've been doing more rehearsals lately, so if I have a rehearsal, it usually knocks off about 9:30, 10. But it's basically the same kind of schedule. And then if I am doing music stuff where I have to promote, gigs, or or kind of was pretty busy for a while, like in booking mode, like trying to get some gigs going, and then also that takes up some time, and then promotional stuff when I have gigs that will usually take up a good chunk of my mornings too, or midday afternoon, and I usually spend when I'm doing a lot of that, which has been pretty ongoing, I'll do that a lot in the morning. And, and then having to coordinate anything around that, emailing and texting and scheduling and all that shit. But that's, my typical day, as boring as that sounds. And I usually fire up a movie during the week. I usually fire up a movie around 9:15, 9:30. That's like average. And I watch a movie usually every night. On weekends, I will kind of do the same thing. It's a little bit of a different thing because if I'm out or if I happen to have a gig, I'll get home usually a little bit later. But I more or less do the same thing. I'll watch a movie when I come home and chill out, for a while or whatever. So I thought maybe, okay, maybe I am not getting into this movie because it's too late. But then I was like, no, I watched a movie. I put this movie in about my normal time, my standard time of when I watch a movie. And I typically watch a movie every day. If I get home like midnight, 12:30 from something, I typically won't. I usually will watch like before I go to bed, I usually watch music videos on YouTube, or I'll finish up listening to some interview podcast thing that I've been wanting to finish or get to, and then I usually go to bed. And so I thought, okay, it's not that. I just could not get into this movie. And then but then I was disappointed because I was like, well, I gotta, I got to give this movie more of a chance because of all of the praise that this movie has gotten. There's got to be something to it. So literally Tuesday, I started watching it. I could not get into this movie. I couldn't get into it at all. And then I put in another movie. I actually ended up watching Fatal Attraction after, you know, so kind of a very different kind of a film. I just finished up a show on that, which is a classic movie. So I couldn't get into it. I put in another movie and watched that for a while. And then last night, I had a gig during the day, and then I had a rehearsal after that. But I had a couple hours in between to just kind of chill out and relax. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it then. So I finished up Fatal Attraction, and then I started watching this again, and I had some time. I had about 3 hours or so in between the from the gig to the rehearsal, and it was early. It was like I don't typically watch movies that early, and I was watching it, like 5 o'clock or like 6 o'clock, 6:30. And the same thing happened. I got I don't know about 40 minutes into it, and I'm like, I can't get into this movie, and I'm like, there's no way in hell that I'm gonna be able to watch this movie for 5.5 hours. There's no way. And the thing is too that I was surprised about this movie is it's essentially it's definitely I guess you could call it it's definitely would be or it's considered like an art house film, but it's a science fiction film and it's got a pretty interesting premise, a pretty interesting story. I will say the cinematography is pretty cool, but again, I think pretty much every movie this films that I don't know. I think when you people always say that now, like that's so commonplace, and we're all that. Well, this was not great, or this was okay, or blah blah blah. But the cinema, but boy, it looked great, and it's like, you know, generally it's pretty easy to say that most films like look good, I guess, from a production value, like they have pretty good sense, or there's some good cinematography, and even movies that are just not good at all, or just that are just terrible. This is not. I'm not saying that this movie is terrible by any means, but I just had a lot of problems with it, and I was kind of conflicted on my thoughts about it because I was like, well, I can't judge this movie if I haven't really watched it. I need to watch it. But I tried it again last night, and I got about 45 minutes or so into this movie, and I could not get into it. And I was surprised that it is a science fiction movie. It's got a real interesting kind of premise and story. And the cast is really great. I mean, you have Max von Sydow, you have Sam Neill. There's some really great actors in this film. And the other thing, there's some really great musicians and that contribute music to this movie as well. I mean, David Byrne worked on this film and contributed music to this film. Amazing, legend. Also, Nick Cave in the Bad Seeds, and I'm like, okay, another fucking legend. I mean, you can't really get any better than David Byrne and Nick Cave, and I'm like, okay, it's got all of these ingredients. It's got all of the and a great cast, and I was still like completely not into it. And I'm like, what's going on here? And the thing that I've been thinking, it's not obviously, even though I could not get into this movie. It definitely made me think, and I still think about it. Mostly trying to figure out what is it about this movie, or what are the things about this movie that prevented me from, you know, diving further into it. Because when I got to the 45-minute mark, I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to sit through this for four and a half hours. I'm gonna, jump out a window. And I think the thing, so I've been thinking about this movie, and again, even if you have a movie experience and you watch something that's really good, or even something that's not very good, but if you still think about the movie a lot, whether it was the best thing you've ever seen or whether it was the worst thing you're seeing, that you've seen, it at the end of the day, that film still, like, on some level, has spoken to you, especially if it's a really great experience. But on some level, even if it's not a great movie, the movie has, like, said something to you, and that something's resonating with you. Because I think a movie at the end of the day you should want to think about it the next day, and or talk about it with people. And I think if a movie does that, okay, there's something there. There's something, like, of substance there. It's the gears are turning. And but mostly what I've been thinking about around this movie is the things that I really didn't like around this movie. And it's weird. There's again, the cinematography is really beautiful, but I don't know, it's like I don't really think that has as much merit as it once did, because you know I've seen a lot of not very good movies, and they generally look good, but they're void of anything else, and I don't know. So, and with tech, and that comes a lot with technology, with the cameras that people use now, and the budgets that some of these movies have, which actually help a lot of these productions. But the thing that I realized I could not get into, and again, it doesn't make any sense, because you have an incredible cast. You have, again, Nick Cave, David Byrne contributing music to this movie. It's a science fiction movie. I'm like, why am I not into this? And I felt like when I was watching it, it was like, well, one, I think that this movie is boring as all hell. I have to say it. And sorry if I'm hurting people's feelings that put this movie on this giant pedestal, that it's this, like, art house masterpiece. I generally think this movie is super boring and super slow. And I love slow burn movies. I love when films take their time, and you're getting step by step little bits of information. It pulls you in, little kernels that just keep, like the Pied Piper. You just want to, you want to get pulled in. You're getting pulled in more and more. I naturally kind of gravitate towards films and cinema, and directors that have that way of storytelling. But it takes a skilled hand to really tell a story that way. Not anybody can do it, because some films can, where they can be at a snail's pace, but yet there's might be just enough to keep you engaged and pull you along. And I tend to really love slower films, and where there's a lot of development and a lot of, if a film is, like, say, a thriller, there's this area of where it grows and grows, the suspense, and the air is slowly being put into this balloon and over time. And I love that when it happens. But this movie I felt was just ridiculously slow. And the other things about this movie were that I felt just didn't work. Well, first of all, it's a science fiction film, and I felt like there was nothing about this world or the environment that these characters are in, or just this entire film, that made me feel like it's a science fiction movie, which is weird. It just felt like there was nothing about it that had. There was no futurist aesthetic to it that I thought was interesting. Like whether it was like the technology or the 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 actual time period that this film was set in. It just yeah, it just didn't have it to me. It just didn't doesn't it doesn't feel like a science fiction movie, and I attribute it to like I didn't really like the production design. I didn't think that that was really interesting. The costumes, even the color palette, like I just felt like everything was off, and it just never. I never felt like I was being pulled into a science fiction movie, let alone something that's going to be 5 hours. I just never felt that attraction, and I honestly have to say, which sounds again crazy, I did not like the music for this movie either. I thought the music was just kind of there. It had no again, it didn't tie into this thing or theme of any kind of a science fiction reality. I just wasn't into the music. I didn't think the music was very good. I didn't think the production value was very good. I never felt like I was being immersed in a science fiction like world. And I think the story, the a lot of the characters were ambiguous, but or just not interesting. I was never really pulled to care about any of these characters. And it's weird because and then I kind of feel like this film I kind of feel like this movie's like kind of well pretentious. I think this movie's pretty pretentious. And I think what Wim Wenders like he's a good director. I mean, he's a really good director, but I feel like this movie is just super overrated. And I feel like maybe what he did was he was trying to make a science fiction movie without making a science fiction movie. He didn't want to like have some of the things we expect to see in a science fiction, maybe certain kinds of tropes. I mean, there's obviously not spaceships and robots and AI and all of the shit, but there's really none of that. There's none of those things at all in this film that make me feel like I'm watching this giant science fiction epic at all. And it feels really pretentious. It feels like it was a premeditated thing to try to make a science fiction movie, but not make a science fiction movie in this kind of pretentious, art house way, if that makes any sense. And yeah, I could not get into this movie for the life of me. So yeah, I don't know. It just totally missed the mark for me. And again, I tried the first night. The first night that I tried watching it, I was like, okay, I just can't get into it. But and then I, switched it out for another movie, and then I was like, well, I can't make up my a mind. I can't make up my mind around it. I have to give it more of a chance, and before I can have any kind of feeling over about this movie or any kind of opinion. So I honestly tried again, and I couldn't make it. This also stars William Hurt in this film, and so I or John Hurt, and I just could. Or sorry, William Hurt was also one of the stars, and I couldn't do it. And at one point, like I said, I was watching this movie, and I'm like, man, there's no way in hell I'm gonna be able to sit through this for almost 5 hours. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this movie. It's I don't know. It was disappointing, very disappointing. Not what I expected in any way, shape, or form. Considering all of the I don't know all the things I've heard, all the acclaim that this movie has gotten, and I don't know. Maybe by the third hour of this film, it gets really great, but I can't do it. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this. I typically don't do a lot of like negative reviews, but it's not necessarily well, it is a negative review, but I like to mainly talk about movies I love, but then I also like to mix it up and try to do shows on movies that I don't like as well. And mainly with movies, when I go to the movie theater, I will do a review on a movie no matter what. But and then occasionally with movies that I actually own. This is one that I own. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about this movie. I was very surprised by my reaction, and I felt like after last night, I was like, okay, uh, yeah, can't can't get into it. So it is what it is. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.